What is going to be the best watch to wear in the cockpit? That's what we're going to discuss today. Is it going to be a traditional Swiss watch, which costs thousands of dollars, or one of the newer smart watches? Or maybe you don't even need a watch in the cockpit.
That's the one I want.
Of course you want it. But do you deserve it? That watch was made for pilots.
Watches, gentlemen. It will be 1426.
Well, we are pilots.
No, you're not. There are no real pilots anymore. Just people in nifty uniforms who operate computers, who've never touched an engine, who've never heard the sound of a Spitfire, who've never pulled out of a spin at less than 1,000 feet. They deserved a watch like that.
Do pilots really need a wristwatch to fly today's airplanes? That's the big question. But first, let's talk a little bit about the history of pilot watches. Most pilots are not familiar with the fact that the very first men's wristwatch was made for a pilot. Up until that time, men only had the option of a pocket watch. In 1904, a Brazilian aviator pioneer living in Paris named Alberto Santos Dumont devoted his life to aeronautical experimentation. Exposed to the various elements in the sky, it seemed impractical to pick up a watch from your pocket to tell the time. Feeling the need for a timepiece that could be seen easily when flying, the Brazilian pilot came to one of his best friends, Louis Cartier. Cartier was a third-generation watchmaker and grandson of the founder of the Louis-François Cartier Watch Company. This led to the birth of the very first men's wristwatch. Cartier drew inspiration for the case from a traditional square pocket watch from Cartier's previous creations. Santos Dumont was a celebrity of his era. He wore the watch constantly, and coupled with his very flamboyant personality, it wasn't long before many noticed the timepiece on his wrist. As queries flooded in from excited customers, Louis Cartier instantly recognized the opportunity to create a practical alternative to the fashionable pocket watch. Since the beginning of aviation, wristwatches have been an essential instrument in the cockpit. Timepieces were used primarily in instrument flying, but also in fuel management. It was essential for timed approaches, fuel management, holding patterns, takeoff times, logbook entries, clearance times, and for navigation purposes. All of these functions have now been supplanted by glass panels which calculate and record all of the above data. I purchased both the Garmin Mach1 D2 and the iWatch Ultra Pro a little over a year ago. I wasn't sure which one would prove to be the best for me, but one certainly has stood out as the better of the two. The question then becomes, with the advent of all the new avionics, smartphones, tablets, etc., is there even a need for pilots to wear a watch in the cockpit? We flew with the two most popular smartwatches for over a year, and one of them blew the other out of the water when it came to usefulness, ease of use, and features. We will go over the many features of both, compare them, and show you why and how we chose one over the other. We'll be covering in great detail the many advantages of each watch, starting with the Garmin, and then we'll go over the Apple iWatch Ultra. So the question begs again, does a pilot actually need a watch? The short answer is probably not. I know of airline pilots that fly with Mickey Mouse watches and others who use their watch just as a timer to making sure they get up in time after a nap. Watches have therefore become just part of the unofficial uniform of the trade, just like aviator sunglasses and leather jackets. They have become a fashion statement. So why then has Garmin put so much effort into making a pilot watch, and why are fancy Swiss watches still so popular? Every pilot nowadays flies with an EFB, typically an iPad loaded with ForeFlight, and as a backup you can get ForeFlight on your iPhone also. Glass panels also have all the information you could possibly want or need, loaded with flight charts, weather, alarms, stopwatch, fuel management, calculations, checklists, weight and balance, timers, estimated time of arrival, etc. Does a wristwatch with a moving map and all that backup that your iPad and glass panel have crammed into about an 1.5 to 2-inch screen on your wrist really going to be useful or even helpful, especially in an emergency situation? If your glass panel fails and the backups of the glass panel fail, including your iPad fails, your iPhone fails, you're in pretty deep shit. I don't think a wristwatch is necessarily going to save you. So the big question then is, what does a wristwatch offer that your handheld devices and glass panel don't already provide? Well, there are a few things that neither your panel or handhelds can do, and there are a couple things that actually work as a very good backup. Let's start with the Garmin. Many retailers will tell you that you absolutely need this watch. When the watch hit the market, many reviewers were over the top with praise, but only after living with it for a few days. The Garmin D2 Mach1, at first you had only one option for a watch face. Now there are others downloadable via the Connect IQ store, but it does take a bit of patience. First of all, the face. In the top left has sunrise and sunset. Top center has UTC. Top left has the altimeter set to the local barometric pressure. Mid right we see the digital time and date. Bottom right, battery life. Bottom center, wind speed and direction on the runway. Bottom left, steps for exercise. And mid left is the ATIS with clouds and visibility. When it comes to apps, the options for the Garmin are somewhat limited. I'm not aware of any third-party apps available. Included with the watch, however, are weather, pulse oximeter, heart rate, airport information, including elevation, fuel, weather, ATIS, terminal area forecast, MOS, cloud coverage, winds, also runway information, length of the runways, traffic patterns, etc. And then finally gives you all the frequencies for that airport. Garmin is noted for its sports watches, and this also carries over into the D2 Mach1, although not quite as well. The watch is great for workouts, including swimming, biking, etc. It has over 30 workouts that you can pull up. It also has notifications, messages, smart chat. The altimeter reading is automatically set to the local barometric pressure, whereas the iWatch gives you a GPS altitude. The Garmin will calculate density altitude for you. It has a compass, stress monitor, and record your sleep. In the fly mode, it will record logbook entries, has a timer. It also calculates ground speed, barometric pressure, again UTC, bearing, tracking, distance, estimated time en route. And one very cool feature is that it has alerts you can program for low oxygen levels, elevated heart rate, and pre-selected altitudes. In the moving map, you can select nearest airport, directional tracking. It also has a wallet, music, find my phone, redshift mode, which both watches have, by the way. However, it does not have anything like an ELT like the iWatch does. You have to buy inReach and pair it for an additional $400 to get that same function. You can use spread crumbs if you're out hiking, and it'll help you find your way back to your starting point, your car, or your airplane if you forgot where you parked it. App options for the iWatch, on the other hand, are unlimited because of Apple's access to third-party app designers. As far as faces, I typically just use the standard Wayfarer. It's most pilot-friendly, and on that face you can customize what you want to see where you can't do that on the Garmin. I have it set up so the top left has the compass, elevation, and elevation alarms. You can set the wristwatch to alert you when you reach a certain elevation. It has waypoint bearings. It also traces steps, marks waypoints, cars, etc. Top right has UTC and any other time zones that you've chosen. Bottom right has the date and calendar, which includes daily, weekly, and monthly schedules. Bottom left has a timer, which includes the most recently used, plus all common timers, and a custom setup function. Or you can just say, hey Siri, set a timer for whatever, and it will set it for you. Center right has temperature and weather, including hourly, weekly, also conditions, temperature, precipitation, wind, UV, visibility, humidity, and air quality. Center left has waypoints. When it comes to apps, this is where Apple really shines. Available third-party apps basically have unlimited numbers, and they are just adding to them daily. The apps that I most commonly use are heart rate, AccuWeather, the O2 monitor when I'm flying, remote camera. It has an EKG, which is great because it will pick up if you have atrial fib and warn you about it. It also has a phone, so it's like an additional telephone that's loaded onto your wrist, which can be extremely helpful if you can't pull your phone out of your pocket. It also has a siren, which is a really cool feature, and which carries up to about 2 miles. Has a sleep tracker, and also you can load it with ForeFlight. And like the Garmin functions, ForeFlight has closest airport, which is typically, or your favorite airport. It'll give you the METAR, terminal area forecast, MOS, 10-day forecast, winds aloft. It also provides frequencies, runway lengths, and condition. It does not have a moving map like the Garmin does. It also has a dedicated exercise button, which was one of the big selling points for me because it connects so well with other Apple devices and third-party devices such as Peloton, and it has basically any exercise you can think of. They have really caught up with Garmin when it comes to exercise watches. And in my opinion, functionality and usability of their exercise modes is above Garmin. It has a dive computer built into it, which is just as good as any $700 dive computer. Works just as well. It keeps track of depth, time stops, etc. So yeah, the functions just as well as any other dive computer. Battery life is up to 60 hours. Again, has hands-free phone. You can do Siri on it and ask any question, even ask what's the frequency of the nearest airport. So let's delve into the main differences between the two, between the Garmin and the iWatch Pro Ultra. Both have O2 monitors. Both have heart rate monitors. Apple has an EKG and an ELT, which will detect a crash, and an AFib monitor. Garmin has moving map, graphical weather. Apple has telephone, which is hands-free. Both have airport information, altitude timers, exercise apps. Apple has a siren, the dive computer. One of the major differences though is Apple's has a 60-hour versus 10-day plus on low energy mode. Apple actually outperforms Garmin when Garmin is in fly mode, however. They both have night mode, they both retrace steps, both have GPS in, but Apple has GPS out and will send messages if you are in need of emergency. Apple has more third-party apps, and as far as battery life, Garmin wins. So as far as ease of use and programmability, expandability, and features, I think Apple has blown the smartwatch industry out of the water. Again, do you need a watch? So a brief list of what smartwatch can do that your other device instruments can't. It contains an oxygen monitor, hands-free phone, the Dick Tracy app, an EKG to check AFib, heart rate monitor, exercise tracker, dive computer, fall detector, alarms for altitude and oxygen levels, and heart rate. It also has a siren that carries for 2 miles and essentially has a backup ELT. I've flown with these two watches for over a year now, and it came down to which watch I used the most, and found that I used Apple by far the most and was the most functional for me. It was also a matter of ease of use and finding the functions with the least amount of effort. iWatch is about $700 versus $1,200 to $1,300 for the Garmin, so there's that also. I'm keeping the iWatch and giving the Garmin to my son, who's a pilot.
Gentlemen, your watch?
Let's get our nifty uniforms back to work.